You get all the toys with this, no matter how little you want to pay.
Right. So the stuff that actually matters to
the stuff that
people
keeps
that
you safe,
Yeah.
the stuff that keeps you and your workmates safe,
Yeah.
or your staff safe, is active in every model.
Right.
That's awesome. Righto, so all we're going to do is, this is blimmin' steep down here, I've got to tell you. You'll feel the front start to slide straight away. Now all I'm going to do is set the speed, and I'm going to take my feet off all the pedals. Alright, you already feel it sliding, okay? I've set the speed, there it goes. It's taken off. I've got no control whatsoever. All I'm going to do is steer it. My feet are away from the pedals. And that's absolutely given me directional control in a slide. Now if that was on a ski field road, a snow covered road, the Cardrona ski field, or a slippery paddock, I didn't do anything but steer it to a safe place.
So it just follows you wherever you steer.
Yep, absolutely. And I love my driving. I've got a passion for vehicles. There is nothing that can come close to this. It is in a class of its own. So that's what I really want to talk about here, and then we'll get back to what the manual's all about. So we're driving along right now, and it's gone all the way to 6th gear. Now 8-speed automatic, but remember it's actually more than that, because it's got 3 modes in that transmission. The S mode, which is special, not sport, but special. When you drive normally and you're in drive mode, it will intuitively adapt to your predominant driving style. As soon as you start going into special mode, it will adapt to, oh, he wants to change his modes more often. He's going to change his driving style. He's going to be towing a load, and it will adapt and change a lot more often. It won't settle in like it will in drive mode anywhere near as often. It will respond faster, sharper, and sooner. And that becomes really, really important to me when you start pulling heavy loads around a windy road. But then you've got this other side of it, which is the Tiptronic, or the manual mode. Now this is where it is truly a manual, in the sense that, let's just look at going down. If you're in 1st gear and you really do give it, it will actually stay in 1st gear all the way up over 4,000 RPM. It stays in 1st. It doesn't upshift on its own, which is a pain in the butt when you want a 4-wheel drive. Now, so that means you've got 8 gears, you're always in the right gear, you can use it intuitively. But let's actually do something else. Let's get up to say, let's get up here, and now let's just keep up shifting. So we're doing about 50, 60 kilometers now. We're in 5th gear, we're in 6th gear. Let's go to 7th gear. That's 7th gear, we're now at 1100 RPM, all right? And if I go just a fraction quicker, it'll let me go to 8th. Now, I'm nearly on full throttle, and see how it's not revving the engine? And it's still pulling. It is a genuine manual gearbox as well, because it will actually lock the torque converter and use the torque. So there it is, just above an idle, acting like a manual. If I go all the way to the floor, it knows that then I need to react. It goes to kick down mode. So 3 distinct transmission modes, which pretty much gives you the best of a manual, the best of a lazy automatic, and the best of a very fast moving sports shift mode, or a special shift mode. I don't think there's no other vehicles that have that level of management in its transmission. Now what's good about that then is that it's got it's full-time 4-wheel drive, but they're different to a lot of other full-time 4-wheel drives. It gives a 60-40% power split straight off, so 60% of its torque goes to the rear, 40 to the front. So it's actually going to feel like a proper rear-wheel drive, but it can't skid the rear out. So for instance, we're sitting in the paddock right now, and if I give it a big bootful, it's actually going to want to drive all 4 wheels. Look at that, so it's going to actually want to pull all 4. And that is phenomenal in the sense that it doesn't shift to the front, shift to the rear. It just wants to pull. It can't skid a rear without skidding a front. Can't skid a front without skidding the rear. Better than that even, and this is where it's unique, is here we are turning a circle. It's bloody tight. It's very tight, and on paper it may look like it lines up with other utes. Trust me, when you're in it, it is better. The other thing is that because we're full-time 4-wheel drive and we're turning this circle, say we're in a slippery area, every wheel is doing its own arc. So as we go around here, that wheel there is turning a different circle to that one, which is different to that one, which is different to that one. Every wheel can do its own distance with no bind up, all providing the same level of drive. That means that it's absolutely optimizing traction over all 4 wheels, and my turning circle doesn't get any bigger. So if you're on a snow road, in ice, etc., and every wheel is trying to pull you in the direction you need to go equally, that's absolutely helping you to stay online and in control, isn't it? Hill descent control. As we're going backwards here, the speed of the vehicle is fully contained. So we're just going to set it by applying the brakes, and now you'll see the light flashing, and because I'm still in drive, it's giving me 4 seconds to go forward. Actually, so we'll just pop it into reverse, and you'll see the light flashing there. See the speed retention. So I've set the speed at which we want to back down. Whatever speed I take off the brake, that's the speed this vehicle will back down the hill.
Oh, okay.
Now,
so your foot on the brake, you're rolling where you want it to go that speed, so your foot off, and it will just hold it. Yep.
If I want to go a little bit faster, I'll put the throttle on, and then when I lift my throttle off, it'll now hold that speed. If I want to then slow down again, I'll put my foot back on the brake, slow it down, and it'll hold the new speed. You know the good thing about this? It even works in neutral. There's neutral, we're still doing it. So it will totally manage the speed of the vehicle. We're in neutral now, and it's so clever that if I put a little bit of throttle on in neutral, I've now said I want to go faster in neutral backwards. How's that? This is the only ute of its class that you can just drive on in, and it's always in 4-wheel drive on slippery tar seal, on ice and snow, and when you head into this environment, it's still in low range now, in 4-wheel drive. And if you imagine when you're on a tar seal road, you need a dynamic control that works very, very quickly on snow and ice, because you're working very, very at higher speeds. When you're off-road, it's a paradigm shift. You don't want it killing the power climbing the hill, and you don't want it stopping. So that's what that button there's for. We press that button and it really brings in that off-road pack, all that hill descent control and everything. Now, dynamic control kills the power if you get too much wheel spin on, because it can throw you off the road. With these utes, when you turn the dynamic control off, it doesn't turn completely off, it just goes to an advanced mode. So now, if you get too aggressive in an off-road situation, it will allow wheel spin. So let's just go through here. So it will allow me to really give it a go if I really need it. And then it says, well, you're actually starting to lose it, so I'll just kill it back. So it actually really does help me to grab every ounce of traction and allows me to have some aggression. It never turns completely off. Trust me, I can show you how bad it is if we're in a vehicle that doesn't have that. First thing is that we know the vehicle has this level of hill descent control. If we come down here, trust me, it's so slippery. If we come down here, the fall line is towards the fence. We're going to go into a slide in a minute. We're not going to be able to help it. We're sliding now, in fact, but you'll see. So if we come down here and we hit the brakes here and we're heading this way, we slide that way. We have no control. We can't stop it from doing that. As soon as we lock the brakes, it slides that way. What I'm going to do now, though, is I'm actually going to accelerate this way, and then I'm going to hit the brakes, and let's just see what happens, eh? That's the other thing.
So what have you got on now? Got off-road mode?
Well, I'll turn the stability program, so because you never normally turn it off unless it's super slippery. So what I've done is, and this is another great feature, is in manual mode, if you want to start off without skidding, you can go to manual mode, press the gear lever up one, it'll automatically start in second to prevent wheel spin. So you're in a slippery environment, again, it was like riding the clutch to get going. But let's just throw a bit of speed on and let me hit the brake as hard as I can. Let's see what happens to our directional control. Right, locking it. Now, I can go wherever I want to go, and what is happening, every time I turn the steering wheel, the vehicle is steering in the direction that I turn it in. And the reason for that is as I turn the steering wheel, it's got an angle sensor. It's recognising the angle that I'm turning the steering wheel at. It's recognising the speed and the distance that every wheel should be turning on that steering angle, and it's actually applying the brakes at different rates to pull the vehicle in the direction I'm turning it in. So say I'm coming down the Cardrona ski field, I've got the added advantage of full-time four-wheel drive. I've got the added advantage of a package that will absolutely, right down to nothing, even though I'm interfering with it, with the brakes, will actually adapt the brakes to keep me on the road. Wherever I steer it, this system will do absolutely everything it can to make sure I go where I point it. And that is at a level way above its pay grade, because it came from way above its pay grade.
So what would happen in another ute? Your gravity would just take you sideways.
You go down to 5 to 6 kilometres an hour and go into a complete full line slide and leave the road. It just takes off.
Yeah.
So it locks the brakes and goes. This vehicle actually works right down to next to nothing. So if we come down here and we lock our brakes on, you'll hear it working, and it will just keep on working all the way down, and I'll just leave it on and it literally comes to here. Now if in another ute at 5 to 7 kilometres an hour it locks, and if we're on any angle or we're going around a corner, we'll go straight ahead. Now here's a classic. We're just going to go through a gateway. How many front bumpers on vehicles are wrecked because you slide to the gate post? Yeah, well with this vehicle, if I slide to the gate post but I pull my steering this way, it will apply the brakes to pull me away from that post and take me here.
Yep.
I can't tell you how slippery it is. I guess you guys aren't feeling it, but the fact that we're getting around this on the tyres that we are, it's pretty phenomenal. So say you're driving into town and you're going too blimmin' fast and you hit a white line.
Yeah.
And the car stops too much in front of you and you need to turn away from them off that white line, and your brakes lock up. This vehicle will pull you away from that white line by changing its brake forces to each wheel. And it does that on road or off road or any slippery gateway. Clearances, when you go through a thing like this, if you hit the bottom, you'll feel it touch the bottom. Doesn't matter. This thing has nothing below the chassis line that will get hooked up and get you caught. And the protection under the front is second to none. They're bomb-proof, big, thick steel rails.
Right, yeah.
What's a ladder frame chassis?
A ladder frame chassis is where the chassis is separate to the body. So for instance, the latest Touareg is monocoque construction, which is pretty much what a car is. The body has all the mechanical bits stuck to it. Right, might have a little wee subframe, but it's only little subframes. What this one here has a full solid ladder chassis with a body sitting on top of it. But there's a whole bunch of other stuff around that. For instance, every steel panel is galvanised. If you're working in and the worst thing for a body is cow shit. You know, stock races, things like that. Sheep shit, cow shit just destroys vehicles. Well, yeah, I crashed the back of this ute. I backed into a Touareg, great. And I left it for 2 months, but it's all galvanised. So all the paint came off, no rust. So you can imagine in 10 years time, 20 years time, you're going to still see Amaroks driving around looking like they do today.
Right.
Okay, you know.
Right.
Hugely strong. I mean, this vehicle was built to last with heavy off-road use as well.
Right.
So, you know, it's got all these electronics, but the base ute is incredibly solid.
Right.
The electronics just happen to be the most refined in their class.
Right.
When you look at this ute as a mechanical beast, it is way stronger than any other ute on the market.
Right.
When you start looking at the size of the wishbones, the size of the bushings,
Right.
the fact that the wishbones are way apart. You can imagine if you've got a narrow wishbone, and your wheels out here, you've got a lot of forces involved that can play and bend the bushes.
Yeah.
Well, the wishbones on the front of these, have a look at them, they're way out here.
Right.
So that means that they're incredibly strong. It means there's less wear over the life of the ute. I used to have to do my rear spring bushes, my big bushes,
Yeah.
every year. And when you think about that in a two-wheel drive, when you drive forward, it's got to push the body through the spring eyes, yeah? So if your spring eye bushes are small, then obviously it's under a lot of force and you've got the weight on a small surface area. If you've got a big spring eye bush and the shaft that goes through it is big, the whole load is over a lot more of a surface area.
Right.
It means that it's going to be there in 5 years' time. Right. You're not going to be having to replace silly things because of bad design.
Right.
These guys built a ute right from the bottom up.
Right.
I can't speak highly enough about it, eh? And I looked at the front steering, the suspension geometry, and I just thought, this is beyond any other ute I've ever seen. Like, how it was built was beyond any other ute. And then I started looking at all the other things that I could see underneath it. And from that, I just said there is no other ute that comes close to the build of this.
Right.
So no matter how many electronic fancy gadgets they stick in it, they have a rock solid ute underneath it. You watch. Down the track, if somebody says this doesn't last, they're wrong, it will. Yeah, so I've done over 100,000 Ks in them. All I do is stick diesel in them. It cost me half as much to service.
Exactly.